Good morning everyone. In this video I'm going to analyze the live price action for EU and DXY to see what opportunities there may be today. You're going to see my strategy and my analysis, so if you're interested in those then please stick around. Right, starting off on the daily, as always, on the top is EU, on the bottom is DXY. So what can we see on the daily? Well, yesterday you can see we filled our fair value gap which we left behind. Price obviously was bullish, filled the fair value gap, which gave the buy side liquidity and the momentum to overall end the day bearish below the open. Right, so we pretty much closes a bearish day looking like a high test, which may indicate now that we are ready to continue lower after filling our imbalance above. Inversely on DXY, of course, we filled our fair value gap here, closed out as a bullish low test doji, and it may indicate, we filled this imbalance and we're looking to continue bullish, at least for the time being. There's not much else to see on the daily. We've got a previous daily high and previous daily low. As we can see, our previous daily low has been swept on EU and so far is rejecting, giving some sort of bullish momentum. So at the moment, we aren't bearish just yet after filling this daily fair value gap, but the day's just begun. On DXY, of course, we've taken a previous daily high and we're not as bearish as, say, EU is with the rejecting the previous daily low, but they don't move in exact sync. So let's move on to the 4 hour and see what that's going to show us. So on the 4 hour, as before, we have our 4 hour bearish leg. Price came and filled this area, which is a confluence, like a cluster of confluences. We had that daily fair value gap we just mentioned, a 4 hour order block, and as you'll see on the hourly, an hourly order block as well. So we knew, and if you watched yesterday's video and I showed you the opportunity I was waiting for, you may have caught that opportunity as well. You should have been able to catch an opportunity short. So anyway, we've got this area here which provided great resistance and we had a really bearish move off of that to end the day. Now, however, price has pulled back to this 4 hour imbalance here and filled it. So far we are rejecting. We're only 13 minutes from closing another 4 hour candle, which would be a rejection of this area. So we haven't quite had the bearish continuation of this trend yet from this zone. Now, as I mentioned before, this zone is only really at the equilibrium, still kind of in the discount of this leg if we was to measure this out, right? So here is where we get into our premium. So we have premium POIs above, we have this imbalance, this 4 hour order block and another imbalance above that, more into the premium. Price may stop here from what we're seeing with this 4 hour fair value gap, sweep of the previous daily low sell side liquidity. Price may just stop here, continue bullish with its pullback to take buy side liquidity from above this area here or into these POIs before possibly continuing that trend downwards. So now we may be looking for both buys and sell opportunities here. We obviously have an imbalance above price here, so this isn't quite over yet. We may just fill this and continue down, so that's something to look out for. But bear in mind we have this imbalance here above price, but so far we are rejecting this low. So what that would mean is if we've made this bullish move here, we've pulled back, rejected this imbalance here, if price then goes on to move bullish, this is possibly a weak high, because this high here failed to break this low and make a new lower low. So this becomes weak. So that's what we can see here on the 4 hour, right? Price may be held at this area and we may be pulling back to go towards these higher time frame imbalances and POIs that will draw on price, and because they're in a premium of this price leg. So on DXY, of course, is similar. We have our imbalances here below price that price still hasn't filled. From this bullish leg, we only pulled back to a confluence here, the daily fair value gap, 4 hour fair value gap, which was very much in a premium. And again, price is at the previous daily high here. So if price was to reject from this area, this would be a weak low. We may come up and sweep some buy side liquidity here first, but we'll see that on the 1 hour, just to warn you, this isn't moving live with price. So anyway, yes, we have those attractions for price to go lower on DXY and higher on EU. We have a possible rejection area here to sponsor that move higher, for price to show its intent to go for this weak high and some premium buy side liquidity POIs. Now let's go to the hourly and see what that shows us in more detail. So here on the hourly, we can see now at this area we've stalled at, it is previous daily lows, sell side liquidity. There is a 4-hour and 1-hour fair value gap here that we have filled and rejecting. Price is closing above those. Currently, this most recent 1-hour candle looks like it's going to close as a 1-hour low test, right? We have these 1-hour imbalances above, which is a draw on price and resistance, and obviously there's the 4-hour imbalance here as well. I've just refined it to the 1-hour. The 4-hour imbalance closes up here where this 1-hour imbalance is as well, and of course I guess this is a 1-hour order block here. So price has these draws, as I've said. They're draws on price, but they're also resistance once filled. So we need to see how price reacts in these areas. So far today, what I can see is we possibly have buying opportunities from this area and selling opportunities from these areas, or areas to be cautious of at least as resistance, right? If we're going to buy, we probably want to buy before we reach these areas, or see how price reacts to these areas for sells. This is our leg here, and if price holds this area and begins to move bullish again, this would be a weak high. It has buy side liquidity resting above it and POIs imbalances resting above that. For DXY, as you can see, there is quite a lot of divergence here. So if we look at this previous weekly high and the previous weekly low on EU, we're quite far away from the previous weekly low on EU. We're quite close to the previous weekly high on DXY. It's very possible that we may reach this previous weekly high to give us that buy side liquidity to sponsor that move lower down to these POIs in the discount. So that's just something to be aware of given how close we are to that area. Whether it happens or not, I don't know, but it would be a good buy side liquidity sponsor to give us shorts from. So something to keep an eye on. We may hold this area here, though it would mean we'd need to break through these 1-hour and 4-hour fair value gaps most likely. But we would then have our divergence signaling the weakness on DXY and strength on EU. So either way, we would have possible long opportunities after taking these highs if that happens. So where price is now, of course, we have incomplete imbalances, just like we do up here, which may draw price down to them. So we have these slight imbalances on DXY as well, where price may be attracted to after possibly maybe even sweeping just these highs here. So apart from how close we are to the previous weekly high, previous weekly low, we're pretty much in sync and we have the same confluences, except, you know, we don't have these fair value gaps at this area like we do here, but this may cause that reversal. Let's go down to the M15 and the lower time frames and see what opportunities we may have today. As I mentioned at the beginning, these were the opportunities from yesterday. If you were able to capture those, then well done. They were very textbook on the 5-minute, coming from our confluence areas. That's all recorded in my video yesterday, what I was looking for in those areas. I hope that someone gained value from that and was able to seize those opportunities. So into today's price action again, we've mitigated these fair value gaps on a higher time frame. Price has swept Asia highs here, hasn't swept Asia lows here on DXY, so I guess there's some divergence there. But at this moment, I don't see it as that important. DXY looks to have got really close, possibly made some equal highs up here, which would be the lows here on EU. So EU made a higher low here, and this made a slightly lower low. Possibly we may get this sweep here, which would be buy side liquidity sponsorship to go lower. And obviously if EU doesn't make that lower low, then that would be divergence signaling strength on EU. So that would give us a bias for some of our longs. So what would I like to see? So for a buy opportunity, I think at this area, I would like to see price create some structure. So say where it is now on the 5 or the 15, I'm just going to draw this on the 15. We can create some structure here, break that structural high, and then as usual, pull back down to an order block or POI confluence to trade higher. So exactly how this would look would be preferably DXY comes and takes that buy side liquidity to then move down, right? So we would have buy side liquidity sponsorship from DXY, we would then possibly have SMC divergence here on EU, though preferably even if we swept this low here, that would be nice too. So price could come and just sweep this low, or not sweep this low and just keep the divergence as well. But let's say we sweep this low here, that would be some more sell side liquidity sponsorship, right, before we break its high. So that would be great. And then we can have price pull back down to the POI, which would be an order block or imbalance or whatever left behind on the 5 or 15 minute. And then my order would have been set for here. I would have it just below the lows, and I would be targeting probably 3% just from these highs here, or to this high here where the next imbalance as the resistance would be. So that's what my long opportunity would look like here. So that would be our inducement here as well. So if price forms some structure here, that would be great. Breaks that structure, pulls back down to our order block on the lower time frame, and then we can trade upwards towards the highs here. Now it would obviously look great if, like I said, we took our buy side liquidity here, possibly some sell side liquidity internally here as well, and that would give us that good sponsorship. We see some momentum from that, and we can get in the trade before we get up into this area here. Price may just break above this high and reject there and give us a good pullback as well. So we'd have to see what this area does. There is a 4-hour imbalance up here with this 1-hour imbalance, so I do believe price would pull back higher. However, this would be a major negative for longs because we feel the higher time frame imbalance and it's against trend. But this is the first buying opportunity that I would see. And of course, you know, that can also happen from price taking out these lows. We don't need the SMC divergence there, right? We could just use the sell side liquidity, get the same break of structure from there. Price would pull back to this area, and we would be able to enter and do the exact same thing, because DXY would still have done this, and we would see our lower time frame breaker structure, pull back, and we go. We'd have our order set just like that. So for selling opportunities with trend, obviously, like there's multiple scenarios for that. We could see price once again go above here. It might just use that buy side liquidity and break structure immediately, then give us that pullback to a POI, and then we continue this trend lower, right? So this is all possible. We could have our POI here. We've obviously be taking the buy side liquidity from up here, sweeping London, once again its highs, and we would pull back and we would have our short from this area, stop at just above, right? And we could target the recent low, or ultimately the previous weekly low, right? Because that would make sense that we continue to trend and break that low, right? So that's how the first short would look. Of course, it can happen from just slightly above. The same would still apply. We've taken out buy side liquidity. We've gone into this 15-minute order block here as well. We've taken the buy side liquidity from this area. We're in a higher time frame POI. We leave behind this order block here, and we show structure from breaking the low. We would have our breaker structure here, and price would then come back correctively, and we would have our order here waiting to then again go for the previous weekly low or the most recent low there. So this scenario would be the same, but I would like to see that momentum breaking that low, giving us that corrective pullback in order to go lower. The negative would be we'd have this draw on price above here. So now the best place obviously to see that happen would be up here. So same scenario, we come up here. I'll redraw this actually because we may want to wait to see if this 1 hour holds, because like we said, this is possibly a weak high. So what you're going to want to see at these areas possibly is this: price create structure, maybe sweep that structure, break down, pull back. and then we can trade it lower, right? So it's the exact same thing. We've got our breakdown. We have our buy side liquidity sweep and 1 hour POI here. We've got that sweep there. We've got our POI left behind at the highs here. We would have our order placed there. Our structure break would be here, obviously, because that's where structure broke that low. So we'd have our BOS, and this is exactly how my order would look. We would have our 15-minute order block there, and then you could go down to the lows made today or previous weekly lows if you feel that way. Those are the opportunities I see. That's what I would be looking for. So I hope you gained value from that. I hope it was very clear. Any questions, let me know in the comments. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys soon.